We are gracious to have Father John. He is a Catholic exorcist, and he has come to offer us some advice for dads, for families, if they find themselves in some precarious situations.
And moms.
And moms, spiritually. So thank you, Father, for coming on. We really appreciate that.
It's nice to be here.
Jumping into it, maybe a little bit about yourself or how you came to be an exorcist and kind of what that process entails.
Well, I've been a priest like 30 years now. So I want to say 15 years ago, I remember watching the evening news, and it was like, flash, Rome has begun exorcism course. And I'm sitting listening to this, I'm thinking, we didn't really cover that in the seminary. Like, I probably should know something about that. I remember that in the back of my head. So we fast forward about 5 years, and I've been a parish priest most of my first 17 years of priesthood, different parishes, pastor twice. I ended up getting sent to a part of California where there was a lot of prisons to live with an older priest who was turning 80.
Wow.
And I'm a religious priest, so we don't live alone. And my boss didn't really like the idea that the pastor was 80 years old living by himself in this little parish in the middle of, kind of out in the country. Said, well, go live there, but it's a really small church, so they can't afford two of you, so find a job. We got bills to pay. We got seminarians, we got older guys, who need to be taken care of. And go, okay. So everything around me is like a prison one way and a prison another way. So I'm applying, and prisons are turning me down. And then this new hospital is being built, specialized in rapists and child abusers.
Jeez.
And I thought to myself, really, God? Really? This is the only place that will hire me? So I worked there for about 2 years, got to know the other chaplains in other state institutions, and we'd have a conference like every couple of years. And I was at a conference one time, and a prison that the Franciscans had been taking care of for a long time, the chaplain was like 82, 83, and I figured, well, he may be retiring soon. So I mentioned to him, hey, when you think about retiring, let me know. Well, he looked at me like I had offended him. Okay, he's offended because I made some remark about him being close to retirement age. He actually called me a few weeks and he said, I've been praying for somebody because I'm 80 and I want to do some other stuff. So I transferred into the prison and I was there about a year. One day he shows up as a retired chaplain and he says, here's some books for you to read. People give me books all the time. They sit in the corner of my room, and I think about, am I going to read this or not? Is it really a topic I need to read?
Yeah.
And the books he gives me is about Exorcist. Amorth, the exorcist from Rome, he had started writing some books on his experience as exorcist. He goes, the diocese doesn't have an exorcist. Just like, and how is that my problem? So I took the books, threw them in the corner of my room, and I started to think about, if anybody's got this stuff, like possession, demons, I bet the guys in prison got their share. And I bet I'm not even recognizing it. And if I did recognize it, how is it I would help them?
That's pretty extreme, though.
No, but we didn't talk about it in the seminary.
Now, did you?
We didn't talk about it. Okay. So I'm like just an average Joe Catholic here, realizing that, so if somebody's in the middle of a serious spiritual struggle and they really have demonic activity, who's the spiritual expert supposed to be? It's supposed to be a priest.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where to even start. Don't even know the questions to ask.
Okay. Yeah, that's like
And after 17 years of being a priest, I started thinking to myself, there were a few incidences where I thought things were odd, strange, maybe even demonic, but I had to admit I knew nothing about what to do. So that kind of haunted me a little bit. Well, the bishop comes to the prison every once in a while. So I had his email. So I just shot him an email and said, by the way, Bishop, blah, 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 blah. Do you know anything about this course in Rome? He goes, no, but I know somebody who just was involved in that. If anybody knows, he'll know. So then I shot him an email and he shot it right back to me and said, yeah, And he's a few hours from me. And I said, well, on my day off, can I come up and let's have a Coke or have something to drink, some coffee, and just talk about this whole thing about learning about healing and deliverance. Mm-hmm. The category for the church that exorcism falls in is healing and deliverance. Exorcism is just one piece in healing and deliverance.
Okay.
And so as most things go, and an old priest told me this, and I thought it was so funny, but so true. Basically boils down to if you got the money, you get the permission. If you don't got the money, you don't get the permission. So I talked to the bishop about going to Rome to take the course. He goes, oh, no, we don't send people there to go. Bishop, if I get the money, can I go? Oh, yes, you have my blessing. You can go. But we're not going to pay, like $1,500 airfare, put you up, and it'd be $3,000-$4,000 without the course. Yeah, we're not going to be $5,000. Yeah, not doing that because everybody's going to be signing up for stuff like that. So I said, fine. So that year was 2010. It was Oberammergau year, where there's this huge festival in a little village in Germany where they do the Passion Play.
Oh.
They've been doing it for 700 years.
Whoa.
Oh, that must be
They
cool.
started doing it during the plague, and they promised God that they would do the Passion Play every 10 years, forever, if they spared their village from the plague. And the village was spared, and it has. Every 10 years, it does Passion Play. There's like 100 cast members.
Whoa.
Okay. People come from all over Europe. It's only once every 10 years.
I was going to ask that.
There's a morning one. There's an afternoon one. It runs from like May to September. And it seats like 5,000 people.
Is it like a pilgrimage for some people in that sense?
It is a pilgrimage. And they usually go to some other sites. Well, there was a lady who was trying to put a pilgrimage together, which was Oberammergau and the Shroud of Turin. Well, I've got a great love of the Shroud of Turin. Mm-hmm. And you need a priest to go along. Oh, you got your guy. Okay? Because it was going to be on full display. And they rarely take it out of the case. About every 25 years, they take it out of the case and put it so you can really see it. We started in Italy. We ended Germany. You have to go over the Alps on a bus. So I'm literally in a small bus going over the Alps. And there's this argument in the back of the bus between different people about the devil is real or he's not real. It's just kind of, a theological thing. It's not a real being. And I'm watching the snow and it's beautiful. And he's like, I don't want to get sucked into this conversation. But my ear's kind of listening. And all of a sudden, God drops and the lady says, I told the bishop if he had anybody that wanted to go to the course in Rome on exorcism, I would pay the whole thing.
What? No way.
Wow.
So I'm just like, okay.
Also, on a bus over the Alps, you find your financing.
On this pilgrimage, okay. And so I let a few minutes go, and I turn around, and the person says, we need to talk during lunch tomorrow. Well, within a little bit of time, I said to her, okay, this is the dates. And I talked to that priest who had been to the class before, and I said, I'm going to go all the way to Rome for the class, and it's a Monday through Saturday class, but there's a lot of exorcists in Rome. There used to be about 8. It would be foolish to go all that way and not sit with an exorcist and just watch. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to know the info. It's another, you can read a book about surgery. It's a whole other thing. See it?
Yeah, like anything, like hands-on experience.
Right. It's just like being a dad. You read a book about being a dad, now being a dad, that's looks very different.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're paying attention to how your brother's a dad or how your best friend's a dad because, the clock is ticking. You're already 9 months in, you're 6 months in. You're like, I'm going to be a dad really soon. I'm going to be up at the plate. I need to know how to do this, right? And so I said to my friend, what do you think about me taking the course, but staying and then meeting with exorcists and just sitting in and watching this? He says, oh, I can set you up because a friend of mine who's in Rome, who's a journalist, knows them all. So all of a sudden, it just started coming together. And I couldn't make it happen. I was just sitting there just like, okay. Now, being an exorcist is an appointment of the bishop. Technically, the bishop is the exorcist in his diocese. Mm-hmm. That's one of the ministries as bishop. Mm-hmm. That is his. He may choose to delegate that to someone else.
Okay.
He can delegate that just for this particular individual or as a permanent position. So in some dioceses, the bishop says, okay, this person's come to you. They're having a lot of spiritual problems. I delegate to you the authority to pray the rite of exorcism prayer over this person. But it's only for one specific person, for one specific situation.
So you don't have, it's not a requirement to go to Rome and take that course necessarily.
It's the bishop's choice who he delegates as exorcists. Like many things, the bishop wants to know that, have they trained? Do they know what they're doing? Okay. Have they done this before? Okay. There are certain qualifications. Person's supposed to be either a priest or a deacon in extreme situations. Has to be in good standing, have a good moral, spiritual life. Okay? Because the devil's going to push back on you. He doesn't say, you're being evicted, and him say, okay, I'll pack up and I'll go now.
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm bad. He's going to say, you think so? You think I got to leave? What makes you think I got to leave? Who are you to tell me I got to leave?
How long was the training in Rome?
It's a week. It's a Monday through Friday, Monday through Saturday. I couldn't believe they had a Saturday part of that.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
When I read that, I said, no, are they crazy? Saturday too? They only get Sundays off? Italians, you guys are crazy. And so it started like 8 o'clock and it went till 5 o'clock, Monday through Saturday.
Is it academic? Is it like?
Almost all. Okay. The last day is kind of like a panel with exorcists, psychologists.
And it was just vastly different than you said in seminary. You never got anything. Was it just like somebody opened up like the doors for you in terms of understanding? And I guess question would be, why do you think it's not taught?
Well, they say, and here's how I've had other priests tell me this. In the 60s, and most of the guys teaching now grew up and were like in the seminary in the 60s. There was this great influx of psychology, social sciences. So there was this great theme that, a lot of that stuff that Jesus talks about is just schizophrenia and other stuff. He just didn't have all this great social science. Like Jesus didn't know a demonic person from a sick person. All right. And so there was a lot of downplaying about a lot of these demons and all this. This is just, ancient way in which they understood people with psychiatric issues. Okay. And so it wasn't really taught very well. It wasn't really emphasized that, no, it really does exist. And the church really does have exorcists. It's really been revived since Amorth's time in the last 40, 50 years, that bishops have taken that seriously and taking that role of casting out, because that's what exorcism means, to cast out from someone a demonic presence in them.
And what would you say turned that tide to where it was starting to be recognized more over was it an individual? Was it Amorth? Or was it more of maybe the social science and the psychology couldn't really explain everything that was there, and so it started to kind of come back around?
That's a really good question. I know that Amorth made it public. He wrote about it, and shall we say, as an old priest told me one time, sometimes, Mother Church has a lot of stuff in the attic that people forgot about that's really good. Some of the old remedies Grandma taught us, we thought she was nuts, was actual herbal stuff that they had figured out for a couple 100 years. And, we'd forgot all about that. And so somebody puts it in a box and now sells it for money. But hey, it's the same stuff. Grandma used to go out in the backyard. She used to pick these herbs and she'd make a tea and made my throat much better. But back then we thought that was crazy. And now it's like, oh, herbal, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's all the craze. You have to pay a bunch of money.
Yeah. She was like, we just invented it this week. She's like, no, this has been going on a long time. We just rediscovered something very old from the attic.
Yeah.
That's been there. Well, exorcism has been in the church since the beginning. It was common with Jews before Jesus, Jesus's ministry. We have not taught it well. We have not prepared priests well to recognize it. when they come across it in confession, in conversation, that, okay, this is more than normal temptation.
Mm-hmm.
There's something more going on here.
During when you said you shadowed a priest in Rome for a while, is that what, now I don't know what you can say or not say or talk about or whatever experience you had over there. Did you ever have a moment where you were
the person from the
I
TV
guess-
who saw it, that read the books about it, and then now you're in a room with it?
I guess not scared,
Well,
but
it was, I don't want to say, but fascinating is the word. So this person would teach during the day in a seminary in Rome, and he would meet people in the afternoons, 4 or 5 people, about an hour time. Each person was very different. Some little old lady, so, I wouldn't say old, but little women who are maybe 90 pounds at their most, and it'd take like 4 or 5 guys to hold them down. Said, this is not possible. How do they have all this strength? It was the change in their demeanor, because they'd come in, they'd sit down, and he'd ask them, okay, how's it been since I saw you last? What's different? And you're listening to this conversation. Yeah, it's in Italian, but you're listening to this conversation. And just in a few moments after they lay down, the voice changes, the demeanor changes. Just the sound of them changes. And there's this harshness to the word. And I speak Portuguese and I speak Spanish. And so I've got a little of the Italian going on. And it was just like, okay, this is not the same person who just walked in the room a few minutes ago.
Is that chilling to you at all, or at first at least?
It was troubling. I was kind of like trying to put this all together, exactly what's going on here, because just a few moments ago, they're like this, and now they're like this, and it's like 2 in 1. Then they would leave, and there was a lady there who was kind of a translator for me, and she'd say, okay, this kind of situation with this person, we've been seeing them so long, they've been getting better. These are the issues they've been having. And you could just see in the person's face how they were really struggling with something that combination of frightened them and deep concern. Mm-hmm. And some of them were traveling for hours to come see this person because there wasn't anybody near them who knew how to be of help or would be of help. Mm-hmm. When I get people who come to me, I don't know, easily 3rd, 4th priest they've seen. I think one of the people I've seen recently, I'm like the 13th priest they have seen.
What would be the reason for that? Is it just that complicated of cases, or people without the training, and now it comes to someone like you who's had the training and the experience to address it?
Or maybe exhaustion?
People go to the first person they know. Mm. And if the first priest you go to isn't familiar with healing and deliverance, it's like going to a GP, physician. Well, I've never seen this before.
Right, yeah.
I don't know what this is.
That's a really good analogy.
Okay, yeah, maybe I need to send you to a therapist. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because it's hard to wrap my mind around the fact that this is really demonic, okay? Because then there's a different avenue of treatment as opposed to mental health, all right?
Poor people that have to go through that kind of, because like, you're right, you might not see a good doctor, not saying that they're not a good person, but like just without the knowledge, and then you're going down this winding road.
It's experience. It's kind of like, you look at something, if you've never seen it before, you don't know what you're looking at. Okay?
Right, that's true.
So you might send them to somebody in the parish who's a counselor and say, would you listen to this person? Because I don't know what to make of their story.
Right.
I don't know what to make of it. And so they do that, and they come back and they say, Father, I don't know. And so then that priest either says, well, I don't know what to do for you, or, there's a priest in the area who you might want to go talk to, or I forward you to the bishop because I don't know what to do. This is beyond my area of expertise. And I think she went through a number of people like that. Her case is rather involved, very complicated, has to do with satanic stuff, has to do with stuff that went on when they were very, very small. I get people who come to me, and I meet with people with a team. There's at least 4 or 5 people with me. I'm fortunate to have 1, if not 2 psychologists in the room with me at the time.
Now, have they?
I was going to say, I was
ahead.
just going to touch base. No, go ahead. I was
I
going
was
to
going
touch
to
base on
say,
that.
have they kind of seen the person before that point, or screened them, or kind of like went through? I imagine somebody who's been to 13 different people has probably seen somebody for mental health.
I've seen a lot of different things.
Yeah.
According to how the Church in the United States allows the rite of exorcism to be used, you have to rule out that it's a medical issue, that it's a psychiatric issue. Okay. So for it to go the whole thing to end up being used, the rite of exorcism, the formal church's prayer for deliverance, you have to rule out that it's not a psychological issue, that it's not a health issue. Some kind of cancer, some kind of weird blood disease, some kind of something else that explains that. Then you can say, okay, if we rule out this and this, okay, so what makes you think it's spiritual? So I get people and they call me, they get my name, they show up at the door. I have like an 8-page questionnaire. And it's all about spiritual stuff, about growing up, your spiritual life, going to church, not going to church, been to confession, been involved with all different kinds of occult practices, Ouija board, all that stuff, which can be an entry point for evil into our life. And they fill that out ahead of time, email it to me, I read it. So we understand kind of like what we're meeting when we meet with them, what their age is, who's coming with them. And the thing that always gets me, because we used to meet in this room originally, is they come in very shy and almost embarrassed. And very soon into the conversation, like the third sentence, they'll say, you won't believe me. And she's like, you have no idea what I believe. You have no idea what I have seen. And then all of a sudden, it's like a huge weight is lifted off their face, because they have tried to get help in many places and been turned away and not treated with concern. They basically just start crying that somebody finally will take them seriously, that it's spiritual. Because in their bones, they know that it's not medical. They know it's not psychological, Most of these people, at least 30, 40, 50 years old, they kind of know themselves pretty well that, okay, it happens when I go to church. It happens when I'm around something sacred. It happens, in the middle of Mass. It doesn't happen in the middle of the theater. It doesn't happen. It's very specific. Okay? The devil's affected by holy things. He becomes agitated. When he becomes agitated, the person who he's dwelling in is going to experience that agitation.
When you talk about the devil, Satan, and then you talk about demons, what is the connection between those two things? Are they one and all? Are they separate entities? How is that when you say that maybe Satan gets agitated? How is that trickling down into that person?
I kind of believe that we Catholics are like kids who connect the dots. Remember that when we were little? Connect the dots. We have all kinds of dots that we pick up through life. Some catechism. I was a CCD kid. And some from homilies, some from stuff we listen on TV. So we got all these little spiritual pieces, and sometimes it doesn't come into focus well, okay? And one of the things I think we don't do well for the average person in the pew is just like, how do we get the devil anyway? And how did this all start? And why does he hate us so much?
Right.
Because if you don't get the big picture, then you don't understand, what's this? What's this that's in my face right now? The best I've heard it explained by a really inspirational theologian told me, in the creation, when God first created the angels, he basically explained to them the plan. Creating you, a little while down the road here, we're going to create humans out of earth. Yeah, there's going to be a fall. And then my son will be born human to save them. And then his human mother will become queen of heaven. And from some of the mystics and some of the ancient writing, that's when Lucifer, the light bearer. He was so bright. He was as close to an angel as ever going to be like God. Said, if you're going to be anything, you need to be like us, angels. Why are you going to be? Those are just like little earth dolls. You blow some breath into them. Why are you going to do that? And this serving a queen who's human, us angels serving something less than us. See, that was his pride, that he would be in heaven and his queen would be human, and he would have to serve an earthly queen. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so there's this rift in heaven. The war breaks out, Revelations. Saint Michael leads the charge. About a third of the angels fall. In the Bible, when people change positions, their name changes. Abram goes to Abraham. Simon goes to Peter. One of the first questions they ask the Pope, do you accept the election? The next question, and by what name shall we call you? Because the Bible understands that when your role in life radically changes, you're a different person. So you get a new name. They're no longer angels, they're demons. They're no longer obedient to God. Unlike us, when angels are created, they have full understanding. They have no lapses in their understanding, in their memory. They knew exactly what would happen if they chose against God. They knew exactly the consequences, and they chose anyway. Now, they're looking at you and me and saying, you're going to go where I can't go back to? You're going to be in the eternal bliss that I left. Oh, that's like a jilted lover saying, well, if I can't have them, nobody's going to have them. So I'm going to mess with them because I'm going to make them be with me down there. And so they tempt us, they badger us, because the idea that you're going to be in the kingdom they can't return to eats them up.
In terms of kind of what's his ultimate goal? I mean, I know to turn us from God. Is it something like as far as suicide? I mean, what's the ultimate when he is starting to haunt, possess, do these types of things to people? And then the other would be, I'm always wondering, like, how does that spiritual world layered on ours in terms of, are they sitting here watching us right now in this conversation? Like how does that working when, kind of the devil's watching or tempting you?
They're much more involved in our world than we realize. Padre Pio would say that if you could see angels, the sky is just filled with them. Okay? So they're all around us. So they watch us real well. They can't read our thoughts, but they read us. Just like your wives read you. Okay? You don't have to say one thing before morning coffee, and she could tell you what kind of mood you're in. And the kids have figured out pretty fast how to read that.
Right.
Well, demons or fallen angels, they can see how much your eye dilates. They can see how you breathe, how you flush, whether a person walks by and you notice them, whether or not your eyes dilate because you find them attractive. They can tell by how you listen. Can I hook them on this? Okay. So they read our externals. They can't read our minds, but they read us so they know what interests you. It's like if you have a partner at work. How long does it take before you know exactly what they order for lunch?
Yeah.
How exactly what kind of coffee they want? Exactly what they don't want. I tell the guys at prison all the time, he's still polishing the apple. He's still saying, well, if you just take a bite, you'll be blah, 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 blah. And like he said to Eve, it's only partially true. He said to her, yeah, you will be like God. He never says the downside. He never says the price. You will be like God. You will know good from evil. Well, I could have lived very well in ignorance over that. I would have loved that kind of ignorance. But he never tells people what the price is. Mm-hmm. Okay, and there's usually some good in that. Yeah, to be like God, Shouldn't we want to aspire to be like God? But not that way. He's a master at figuring out what each person's dessert of choice is.
How are people most tempted? I guess it depends on the person. And like you said, what?
Well, just look at our society.
Right.
We're a society all wrapped up in things.
Right. I was going to say material things. Yeah.
Things
Stuff.
that somehow that is going to make you happy. Totally wrapped up in the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Totally wrapped up in inappropriate stuff in the internet. Totally wrapped up that there is some hole in them that booze or drugs or sex is going to fill.
For clarity for us, when you talk about addiction, you talk about substance abuse, or if it's the internet, whatever the vice may be, or the sin or whatever it is, how is it like a window? Is it like kind of damaging to the soul that it takes advantage of? Like, how is that using that? Is he using the addiction, or is he like using that as a window when the people are reaching for something
He
more?
uses anything he can. Okay. Often people have had in their life experience, especially as children, painful events. If they're not addressed and healed with, they abscess over time. You know, people who've lost loved ones when they're little, people who are abused, neglected. If that pain, that wound isn't dealt with, it's not healed. And it's a great opening for him because he kind of tempts them to look for something to take that away. A lot of guys who haven't had decent dads, so they look for their buddies to be like dads. Well, then they hang out together a lot and wear, bars and other stuff and do things to fill that. And nobody's really helped them understand, there's a deep pain in you that needs some healing. There may be some sin involved that wasn't yours necessarily, but it has left some damage, some wound in there. I think it's really hard for some people to deal with that and ask God to heal that and be honest about, that did a lot of damage to me. Often when I deal with people who come to me and they're having significant spiritual struggles, there have been some events in their life that have deeply wounded them and become like access points for the evil one. So sometimes I think we have to be, honest with people. Say, they went through hell.
Yeah.
And they're still in the middle of their hell.
Right.
So how do we help them? How do we pray for them? How do we encourage them? How do we be there for them? There's a lot of kids who've had hellacious experiences when they're young, especially boys. And then later on, they're very physically active. They're very angry. They're very upset. Well,
Right.
They haven't sorted all that stuff out inside. They don't know how. So how do you have big men in their life that say, okay, let's put on some gloves and go outside and let's box a little bit, or let's get involved in sports. Let's give you an avenue to physically express your anger and frustration, as hopefully you have somebody to talk to about this. Because boys process things differently.
Correct.
And just telling them to shove it, to keep it in, it's just like, no, that's not going to help.
Well, martial arts is, I think, probably one of the best things. For me, it was, at least.
I know.
Sports, martial arts,
and that's
all
an
that.
avenue for a male to express himself, to feel comfortable in his body, to feel comfortable in defending himself and processing a lot of deep stuff inside.
Oh, yeah. And the discipline and just,
I know.
It's very, I mean, it's.
But when we see males and they're young and they're angry, I think we ought to ask ourselves, well, where'd that come from? Because God doesn't make them that way. Something stirred the pot. And how do I help as a neighbor, as a friend? Because they're going to learn from being around other men how to deal with that. And the devil's going to try and get them to, just hit that throttle full speed ahead. And it's like, no. Yeah. Men have to learn how to control their impulses.
Right.
Or we put them behind bars because we can't control them.
And that's kind of taking it in maybe a too far direction. But is that something you kind of see as, with all the stuff that's going on today with the shootings, and like, you think we're getting further and further away from recognizing
when
that?
they had that big shooting in Vegas, remember? From the towers.
Right.
The hotel called an exorcist in to go up there afterwards.
Really?
And I got this by a friend who knew the guy firsthand. And he stepped on the floor and he felt the presence of evil on that floor. No one wants to destroy life the way evil wants to destroy life. Everything that is holy, everything that is good, he wants to subvert it in a different way.
Yeah, because with that case, they're still like, we don't know why he did it. We don't know why he did it.
And if you're looking for, a psychological, therapeutic, I think you need to look a little deeper as far as why spiritually would people take all that up there and then just want to kill for the sake of killing. Very much sounds like somebody who's on the dark side, who's, I would say, possessed. People say, well, you don't have any way of saying that. Just like, but who else? Who else wants to destroy life the way the evil one wants to destroy life?
And that exorcist who went to the hotel.
The staff didn't want to go on the floor. They wanted him to go up on the floor and bless each of the rooms. So they called him in and said, we need you to go through, bless that room particularly, but the staff doesn't want to work on that floor.
And does that happen under the radar more than people know in terms of these kind of things happening in Exorcist?
I think I got a text a few days ago from a friend of mine who's a police officer that a 90-pound lady jumped over a counter in a store getting a cup of coffee. And that took like 4 police officers to take her down. And she was ranting and raving and foaming at the mouth. It raises my suspicions about that. I said, you really should go back and ask them, well, what set them off? Something religious set them off? What set them off? That's always the interesting question. What set them off? If it's really demonic, it'll usually have something to do with God. Or they just want to destroy life. But our society is going very quickly that way because they've lost its anchor to God. Okay.
You do see that more and more and more.
And evil's just having a heyday with people then. Because he can slowly move people to do something. When I was in Rome for one of the presentations, they have an interesting saying in Italian. We don't have the translation in English, really. In Italian, they will say, once you start slicing the salami, after a while, the whole salami is gone. Satan has a whole lifetime to get you. He can slice you as thin as tissue paper. Start when you're younger, a little bit more, and then slowly over time, morals and ethics are gone. Doesn't matter. Then we're on a really slippery slope down the rest of the way.
And where do you see it stopping? I mean, as a person of faith and part of the church,
well, if you don't have a spiritual background, you're in the middle of a war and you don't even know you're in the middle of a war. I got a call a few years back from a lady on the East Coast. She had been a Satanist and she was writing a book. I think she became Catholic, very devout, but it's really explaining her experience with Satanism. And one of her interesting comments was that demons smell sin. You know how they say about St. Teresa, Little Flower, that if you pray to her and she's going to, answer, you smell roses.
Yeah.
Okay. They used to say about Padre Pio that sometimes when he would walk in the room, there was this aroma that was unique. I think spiritually we give off a scent, either of holiness or of sinfulness. And demons are attracted to the scent of evil. I think we totally underestimate going to confession. Confession really is a minor exorcism. It really is. You're asking God to deliver you from evil in your life. There's a meeting like every year in Rome for exorcists. One year it's for all the Italian speaking, and the opposite year it's for everybody else in the world. And when I went there, the guy who was president of the Exorcist Association, there was about 400 guys there, I think, 300, 400 guys. He said, if people would just go back to the sacrament of confession, most of our work would be done. We wouldn't have that. People coming to me for confession, for healing and deliverance, who believe they're possessed, rarely are these people living regular Catholic lives of faith. They've been away from the sacraments, particularly the sacrament of confession. Often are carrying deep sin that has not been confessed, which is a very good entry point for evil into them. And so when people call me, and I get calls sometimes from all over the country, okay? Wow. And I say, well, I need to see you tomorrow. And I go, no, you need to sit down and make a really good examination of conscience and go to confession. But hey, nothing I do is any good if you haven't gone to confession first. And any exorcist would say that, okay? Go to confession first. Not just what you've done, sometimes what has been done to you and you're still angry and bitter and hurting, holding on to that. He loves that. I was praying over a person, and I had a chatty demon. Every once in a while, there are chatty demons. The church strongly forbids us from having a conversation with them. I'm allowed to ask certain questions, but in this praying, he said something that just stopped me, Gus. If people hate enough, it can become a curse. So the essence, from what I took that, the essence, the deep nut in a curse is tremendous hate. Well, how often do we, if we're not careful, let hate become too strong in us? Mm-hmm. That we wish upon someone else that something really bad would happen to them. Oh, demons are going to come running to help you facilitate that. Okay, and now all you need is the internet. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, curse my landlord, curse my ex-boyfriend, curse, my ex. Yeah, you could go online and find stuff that's, shall we say, legitimate. A lot of people are playing that stuff and they don't know what they're doing, but there's stuff on the internet that, oh, yeah, these people know what they're doing. And they know how to teach people how to do some wicked, wicked stuff.
Do you think the seances and people trying to resurrect, or not resurrect, but
that would be bad.
That would be a bad thing.
That'd be probably
the wrong choice of word there. Or try and talk to, say,
past relative
or loved one or something that's passed away. Is that dangerous?
Well, let's just talk about this. So where does that come from then? If there is some spiritual power behind that, mm-hmm. Okay, from a Christian understanding, you have God and you have enemies of God. Well, God's not around, exactly showing up at seances, and speaking through people. We don't have a history of that happening, okay?
Right.
Now, can a demon show up and claim to be so-and-so?
Exactly.
To mess with someone's grief? Can someone be possessed in one of the gifts that the devil gives the possessed person? Is that they kind of do this clairvoyant stuff. They kind of have some knowledge of previous stuff. Oh, yeah, he does that. He often, part of getting people to join him. So I'll give you, some understanding of the future. I'll give you blah, blah, blah. But there's always a huge price with that. So you have to ask yourself, so where does that come from? I'll give you a great example. Our culture, Harry Potter. Now, I remember reading all Harry Potter's books, and I have seen all the movies. I ask you this question. Where is God in all of that? He does not exist in Harry Potter. There are wizards and witches, and there are bad wizards and witches. And so you can pick up a wand that you can control spiritual power. I think that's really dangerous because then kids want mom and dad to buy them a wand.
Yeah, like me.
Yeah, I know. We always seen Harry Potter. Yeah, and all that stuff. So you think it's more about the dangers within a game?
But here's the thing: the curses in Harry Potter are real curses. They're not made up.
Really?
They're not made up curses.
So is it from satanic material? Is it internet stuff that you've come across, or
the lady that wrote that admits that she auto wrote that. that she was just inspired. She used to write in a coffee house because she was poor and she couldn't pay for the heat in London. And she said she just wrote it like it was automatic. A teacher, well, it's actually a principal of a school, told me, I don't understand why this is so popular because it's not that good literature, but it's just flying off the shelves. So I kind of wonder about what's behind that because there's no God in that.
So can someone do it without knowing what's behind it? With the previous example, like, can someone be getting influenced through something and behaving a certain way or acting a certain way without being aware of it? Or are people who have that kind of demonic presence always aware of that being there?
People who are really involved in evil stuff love to get young children whose minds are trusting. If you watch the Exorcist movie, the original Exorcist, the long version, okay?
I don't think I've seen the long one.
There's a scene where the priest is asking the mother about everything. And he's walking through the house and he wants to see the whole house. And she takes him down the basement. They're walking around and there's a box. And in the box, he notices a Ouija board and he pulls it out. She says to him, that's from my sister. She's a witch. She used to do that with my little girl. Evil likes to teach people at a young age before they're spiritually aware to know, I shouldn't be doing that.
And it's just a game. Like they sell that, in toy stores?
Yeah, and so they don't see the spiritual significance of that. Okay. And then, well, if this will do things, what do I need to do to get more information? Well, you don't think the devil will play that?
Right.
Well, I'll move this around for you, get you a little bit more invited. Let's get you to believe.
There was another movie called Veronica. It was like, based on a family and a teenage girl in South America.
I haven't seen it. No, I stay away from those things that scare me.
It was, I wasn't really going to watch either. But it was based on a Ouija board. Like they were in a Catholic school and there was a nun involved as well. And she went at lunchtime, she went with a couple other girls to I don't know if the attic or whatever, and messed around with the Ouija board and then became possessed by it. Yeah,
for those people who see it, I mean, because I think I've touched one, you have probably when you're little, at least once. It's at a sleepover, it's at this, it's at that.
I remember being a little kid and mom buying it one at Christmas time. I know she had no clue what that was about, okay? It was a toy. Yeah. Probably a cheap toy. Yeah, I'll buy that.
So how does that work in terms of...
It's like progression, okay? Get them to do this. They're fascinated by this. Then he's going to want to up the game in something else. He's going to want you to get interested in this whole spiritual thing, that he's going to hand you something, but you're also going to have to give him something.
And what are people giving for those who are like, it's just a game? It's like...
Yeah, they don't know that yet. It's like what they used to say about pot. It's only pot. But all the guys in prison tell me that's how they got started. And then they go to the next thing and the next. He's always upping the game. It looks real innocent. But for some kids who have a lot of hurt or pain or want answers about mom or dad or their life, then that becomes their new best friend. Let's ask the board.
So it sounds like it's a piece, kind of puzzle putting together versus like pain spiritually and then the access to these things that start creating.
He will use anything to slowly want a relationship. It's about building a relationship. Our relationship to God is about a relationship to God. People being willing to follow the evil one and what he asks. At the beginning, he's going to be very hidden about that because it's very scary. And the stuff he asks is very offensive to the average person. So at the beginning, it's just something real simple like an apple, just like a wand. But ask yourselves as dads, what are kids going to do with a wand?
Cast spells.
About something they
Control,
want. So then at an early age, we're teaching them that somehow they can control the spiritual world. How does that jive with what we understand in Christianity? The spiritual world is really powerful, and if you're not careful, bad things can happen. And that what? So what would you be willing to do to turn your brother into a pig? Okay, honestly, okay. You don't think you don't think a little demon would say, "Oh yeah, I'll go. I'll teach you to. Yeah, I'll teach you some little stuff here."
So it's about deception and trickery.
It's about power and you thinking that you can control that when in fact the demon's actually controlling this whole conversation now. He'll tempt you with
Right. It's like
the abuse guy. Okay, he's giving away chocolate. He's hanging around the ice cream truck.
Yeah.
Isn't this a little bit inappropriate? The guy's 45. Okay, get a life. What are you doing around a bunch of kids? Okay, they're not yours.
Mhm.
Something's not right here. You should have adult relationships. So this kid is playing with a wand. You're giving him too much room in his fantasy and imagination to think that he's going to control this.
When you're talking about the kind of deception as far as like Satan's concerned and getting you to do one little step at a time, when it comes to hauntings, when you talk about possessed or dolls and things in your house, I mean, between ghosts and demons and kind of, I'm sure it's a
Well, I guess
muddled.
Let's talk about hauntings, okay? When we die and we go to judgment, the church has never said exactly where purgatory is. So this is called speculative theology, where we kind of think, but we don't know for sure because the scriptures don't say anything about that specifically, and there's no declarations. But over centuries, people have witnessed ghosts.
Right.
Beings that they either knew or perceived to be human. They talk to them and then they're gone. So the question is, okay, so how is this? Because people from hell can't do that. Okay, they're confined in hell. So who is this exactly then? What are we experiencing if we experience a ghost, shall we say? And probably the thing that makes most sense is this someone who their purgatory is in this life for some reason? I've had calls from some of the mental hospitals in California from Catholic chaplains who work there and say, hey, some of the nurses like down here, they're like really, there's a wing, really, and, people peer to them and go, yeah, not surprised. You've had a lot of people die there. Oh, yeah. They've died there without benefit of the sacraments. Nobody's praying for those people. I go, next time you have a priest come, and he comes like every couple of weeks, has mass for the Catholics. He goes, yeah, you need to ask them to pray specifically for the souls of those who died there, who are not at rest. Okay? It's a distressed soul. That's kind of the Catholic understanding of that. Probably about 5 years ago, I got a telephone call from a very well-known pastor. And he had a house that he had been to like 3 or 4 times to pray because the kids were saying they were seeing somebody. So after 3 or 4 times being there, he calls me. I said, okay, well, did you do this? You do this? You do this? Yes. Okay. So it's a bit of a drive for me, a good 2 hours. So I get up there. I won't go unless everybody who lives in the house is there.
Oh, everybody's present? Okay.
Why is that?
Because I want to hear the story from everybody. Okay. What's mom and dad experiencing? What's the kids experiencing? Has everybody gone to confession? Is there not something going on in the house that nobody's going to tell mom and dad, but they'll tell me because they don't want this stuff going on anymore?
That makes sense.
Because what's the point of going all that way and half the people aren't there?
Yeah.
And so somebody may be involved in stuff he shouldn't be involved in, and now he's tracked it into the house. Okay. So I talked to mom and dad for a little while. And they're kind of, well, we don't really see it. Sometimes kind of think there's something in the hallway, but the kids, they've been seeing this. Okay. So let's have a talk. Okay. So what's going on? Well, we see somebody. Are they mean? No. They just kind of go by. Oh, okay. So, no, because if it's evil, there's a meanness to it.
Right away. There's no trickery involved in like, oh,
no, there's
nice.
just a sense of it.
Oh, so a feeling or something?
The sense of it. It's kind of like people are being hurt. People are uncomfortable there. People are, if it's a soul asking for prayer, they're just trying to get your attention.
Okay. That was always a fear of mine
sense.
because like my mom has seen stuff in our house.
Yeah.
Priest comes and blesses it. It stops. But to see something and to know, like, this is good, this is bad, will I know that? Or will I
Your gut will tell you because demons don't show up without, shall we say, you not having a sense, this is not good. And I would just say to people, well, what's going on? Because if it's evil, there's a hard edge to it. There's something painful, hurtful, distressing.
Yeah.
If it's just getting your attention, it wants you to pray for them. So I got these little kids aside and we were talking. So, okay, so does this thing scare you? Does it hurt you? No. Is it familiar to you? It's like somebody who lived here before, a neighbor or something. Because this just started happening. It's been going on for a couple months. No. Well, I want you to tell them if you see them next time that you just promise to pray for them. And if you promise to pray for them, will they let you be? Well, the pastor never called me back again. And then I saw him like 6 months later. He goes, I went to that house and I blessed that house like 3 or 4 times. And you go there once and they're like all fine. And I go, I don't think it was haunted. I think there was a soul for some reason. And sometimes children are more perceptive to that.
Right.
That needed someone to pray for them.
So when people say kids see things, have friends, this and that,
I don't think that's anything wrong. As long as it's not destructive, it's not scary. It's just like, oh, well, tell me about your friend. So remind you of somebody you've seen. I think what innocence sees one day will be very probably surprised in heaven when we know all this. What was actually going on there? That they have vivid imaginations, that's fine. We don't want them to be afraid of things.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And say, if it doesn't make you feel comfortable, come tell me. Somebody called me, wanted me to go bless a house. You get those calls. Mm-hmm. And there weren't somebody I knew from the church. And so I went and blessed the house and blah, blah, blah. Then they started coming to church like crazy. Basically, somebody was abusing the child in that room. Mm-hmm. I think that attracts evil to that room. Where an egregious sin takes place, it's almost like a welcome mat for demons to hang out there. Hauntings are either a soul in distress or something evil going on there. Mm-hmm. And they tell exorcists, you need to really discern what's the message here.
Now, if you had to put a number on it through your experience and others, does one more outweigh the other in terms of demonic versus just souls looking for closure on things?
It depends what happened in that place. If you had sinful occult stuff happen in that house, you bet it's going to be some kind of evilness to that.
Can you have both?
It would be rare. I don't think I've really heard of one like that. It's either one or the other. I've had people who come and tell me that, okay, in this room, they really feel attacked. Mm-hmm. When they're sleeping, they feel sexually attacked. And I go, yeah, that happens. There are sexual demons who attack people in their sleep.
We actually have a friend who had an experience like that.
Mm-hmm. He's a good friend, actually.
Yeah, and he was...
and I've prayed with people like that. I've blessed their room. And I said, okay. So somehow you've attracted to yourself a spirit. They're incubus spirits and succubus spirits. One's a female spirit, one's a male spirit that attack people. And I've had people tell me that they felt violated in their bed. Okay. And so...
That's uncomfortable to know.
I know, but that usually means they've been involved in something of grave sin. Because that invites the demon to attach himself. It's like pornography. A person views that, gets involved in that, then all of a sudden they can't quite turn it off. Okay. Yeah. And then it's really fascinating. Then they go to confession. They find it much easier to say it's not as compelling. I definitely believe with pornography, with some drugs, with some music, that there are demons associated with that. When I went to the International Exorcist Conference in Rome one time, they had a few cases of people who had been part of heavy metal and part of the drug cartel, who admitted that they would bring in Satanists to curse their music and the drugs to make it more addictive. So not only is a person dealing with a chemical dependency or music, but there's now actually a demon associated. I had a guy in prison who all tatted up. He showed up. I always laugh when they're all tatted up and they're just little old Catholic boys. And I say,
like that guy.
How does this be? Okay, all Catholic and all tatted up. Okay. And he looks like a big biker, And so we're talking, and he's coming to mass regularly, and he's coming to confession real regularly. And Finally, one day we're talking and he says to me, Father, I don't sleep real well. I have a lot of problems with my sleep. I said, really? He goes, yeah, it wakes me up at 3 o'clock in the morning all the time. A demonic hour.
I was going to say, is there any truth to that?
Because Jesus dies at 3 o'clock during the day. The demon has claimed an hour of its own. So he likes to do a lot of stuff at that time. Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes I wake up at night and like 3 a.m, have to go to the bathroom. I'm like, well, don't look at the clock.
But let me finish this story. They won't go on. And so I said to him, okay, and you've gone to confession lots of times to me. And I go, but let's be honest. Is there anything you've never really confessed that's on your soul? Because that's where evil will get his claws into you. And he takes a deep breath. And he finally kind of admits to me, he turns this, I've tried to kill myself a couple times. You can see that slash marks. Well, that's a serious sin. Trying, kill God's creation. I go, and you've never confessed that all these years? He goes, yeah. So you're ready to ask forgiveness for that? Yeah. Okay, so I go through confession. Comes back a few days later, says, I sleep like a baby now. Don't be keeping stuff buried in there. If we live a good moral life, it's very, very rare that those people I see knocking on my door saying, I think I got a serious spiritual problem.
It's not like you're going to get attacked by a demon walking down the street if you have your house somewhat in order.
My best analogy is when you look at your hand and your skin, it's a tremendous block to infection and disease.
Yeah.
The littlest scratch, though, the littlest cut, if you don't take care of it, can be infested and become much worse really fast. So watch that. Wait, watch. Well, it's just a splinter. Okay, now it's a splinter. Now it's a little red. Now it's a little pussy. Okay, I need the peroxide. Right. I need to treat this. Okay.
Yeah.
Spiritually, if we're living a life of grace, most of that stuff bounces off of us. Even people who want to send evil against us.
Sure.
If we're living a good life of grace, for the most part, that is not going to cling to us. Now, if we're living in sin, now we've got a serious cut here. And they're sending evil, and evil's going to say, I got a hook. I know exactly where to plant that in that person. So if I'm violating commandments, if I'm not living according to God's law.
And that would go back to Satan almost knowing yourself better than you do in terms of his intelligence and being able to know.
He's very, very bright. And here's the thing that people don't understand. It's if I put you in a ring with an opponent who never tires, who never ages, who does not have to stop to eat or drink, how long do you last?
It's hard to wrap your head around
seconds.
that.
Seconds. But if you never step into the ring with your angel, with the saints, in a life of grace, then you're setting yourself up to lose the battle. If you have the armor of God on, there's not much you can do to you. Yeah, he can tempt you, he can, yell at you, but just like, hey, you can't get your claw into me. I haven't given you permission. Free will is everything with them. We have to give them permission for this. And when we sin, we're giving them permission.
Okay, so it's through action, not just literally calling it if you're a Satanist or something.
Well, it's free will, right?
But it comes in degrees. How deeply are we going to go into this? Okay. Yeah, okay, I sin. I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, but now it's habitual sin. Right. Now it's serious voluntary sin. Just like, I had a guy in prison one time. I'd go through there and I bless people. And holy water is really powerful. I was blessing people and the guy couldn't see me, okay? And he said, all of a sudden, these little sprinkles come, and one hit me, and I don't know what you hit me with, but boy, something happened to me. Holy water is incredibly powerful.
Is there any difference between holy water from like Lourdes and then something that a priest blesses? We used to have Lourdes holy water in my house, and it was just like, it felt good.
I didn't even use it. I just kept it in there. I think we used it a little bit.
Bottle. Yeah, I would sometimes bless yourself or something. I
use water from Lourdes. Okay, I've got people who've gone bring back. I'll put it on the table, and when people get tired, say, "Oh, you want a drink? Have a drink." Because if they're possessed, it's going to come right back up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, see, we test people. We just don't take their word. Oh, I'm possessed. Yeah, right. Like a doctor taking a self-diagnosis. Okay. So I have regular water. I have holy water. I have Lourdes water. And they don't know what it is, but I know what it is. They come to drink it. Oh, you're possessed? Yeah, really bad. Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't think so. You're just guzzling that down like no tomorrow. I can tell you. If you be possessed, that's not going to work. All right. So there are things we do to differentiate psychological illness from actually a spiritual illness that they would never know. There's no way they would know. A demon in them would absolutely know.
Is there one that sticks out to you that you did or someone else did where you were just like,
scared? Not scared, but
it's your stage of your career in that sense. It's like you've probably seen a lot. So maybe.
Well, we go through and we bless the room. And there's an old custom that Catholics don't use much anymore, but still on the books, and most priests don't even know is we have an old custom in the church about blessing salt and using it to cook with. It's exorcised salt. You could use it like holy water to sprinkle in your house and room. Well, we put it around in the chapel before people come to pray, and we sprinkle a few grains on the chair where they go to sit. People will come in and stop and actually clean the chair before they sit down. And you couldn't see it. It's so small. But they know it's there, and it's not going to be comfortable for them.
Now, how do you get, I'm sure there's varying degrees, and maybe that gets us in kind of to the stages of possession. How do, not everybody comes in voluntary, or does it have to be voluntary?
It's like a relationship. If you think of possession like a relationship, he wants to get you more and more agreeing to letting him in. The more deeply he's embedded in you, the more deeply you're going to react to something holy. And here people can have problems for stuff they didn't do. What happens first time you take your kid to church in the old days? It's day of baptism, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you as mom and dad, in his name, because he has spiritual authority over him, ask him to be baptized, to enter into God's family. Well, there are people who work the other side of the street who pledge their children to the evil one.
Do they really?
I mean, any
this
idea
is
how common
serious. This is serious. What serious satanic people do this? Satan doesn't just want them; they want a whole family line. And so Satan says, "Well, you want to serve me? Well, I want you, but I want you to promise me your kids." So in the baptism ritual, if you listen very carefully, there's an exorcism. Because when people used to bring children to the church, we never knew where their parents' or grandparents' heart was spiritually, because they could have promised their children or their grandchildren in service of the evil one. And so you want to clean that all out so that God says, yeah, if anybody has claims on you, we're going to break that claim right now, because you wash every cup before you put something good in it, right? You always clean things first, and then you fill them. And in the ancient world, they worship many different gods.
True.
And we have to clean that all out. And today, it's not that different. Right. Worship God of money, sex, power, you name it, drugs. And so some people don't see them, but those really are gods because we have made them more important than God himself in their lives. I had a case not too long, showed up my doorstep. Actually, the kid called. Early teens, trying to make their first communion late in life. And he says, well, I go to prayer sessions at different houses and I like fall down. I like fall asleep. We kind of understand that in the Catholic world, like slaying in the spirit. There's where the Holy Spirit can so overwhelm you that you just feel at peace and you just really just faint. The interesting thing with this person was they never felt peaceful, though.
Going back to trusting your gut in terms of seeing a ghost too and things like that.
Just
what
like
do you feel?
Their sense of it. Sense of being in God's presence is very peaceful, very good. You got nothing to be afraid of.
Right.
So I said, oh, come on over, bring your mom, let's talk. So they come over. Mom's trying to tell me, well, he's a really holy kid. That's why, he has these mystical experiences.
I never had any of those when I was a kid.
Yeah. Haven't met too many of those.
Yeah.
So we talk a little bit, and I don't get 3 lines into the Our Father, and the kid goes on the couch. Not good. So after a few minutes, he wakes up, but now he's like paralyzed from his waist down. He can't walk. So we have to pick him up, put him in a car. Mom takes him to the emergency room, gets him all checked out. They can't find anything.
Well,
A few hours later, he's able to walk. So then a week later, he calls me and wants me to see me again. Now, this is like ringing all kinds of bells in my head, okay? Because he's a minor, because Mom's there, because, this Catholic Church is really, really touchy about minors right now, okay?
oh, I bet, yeah.
Yeah, so we got all our radar up. Okay. So Mom comes and she's talking to me, and then she says, yeah, there seems to be a lot of strife in the family. It's a big family. I want to say there's like 6, 7, 8 kids. And this one's the youngest. And, whenever my dad comes to visit, it seems to get worse. So sometimes I meet with people and it can take weeks, if not months, to really figure out what's going on. Again, I'm not into 1 or 2 lines in the Our Father. We got serious stuff here. So a few weeks later, Grandpa's there, Mom's there, and the kid's there. I never quite understood why Grandpa came along on this. So we're talking about stuff and about the kid and everything. And Grandpa says, I'm powerful.
What?
You said I'm powerful?
Mm-hmm.
That's weird.
And then all of a sudden it just comes to me and I go, you're a curandero, Hispanic for witch doctor. You serve the evil one.
You said this to him?
You're a curandero. He gets really quiet. And I go, what you do is doing this to her. Doesn't back up, doesn't say no, doesn't. And I look at her and I say, he's made some promises to his family line, and she's about to make her first communion.
Ooh.
And he doesn't like it. So every time she goes to a prayer thing,
How did that resolve?
they didn't come back.
Oh, they didn't come back? Oh, man.
Because I'm pretty sure the daughter wasn't going to tell her dad, don't come, don't be doing this stuff that affects our family. Because she even admitted when he came to visit, the tension and the other dynamic in the house went nuts with her older kids. So then Mom has to decide between her allegiance to her dad and her daughter or her son and the rest of the family. This is where stuff happens spiritually in the family, and people don't realize, so auntie or grandfather or uncle was, into that stuff.
Wow.
So
We also can get that same kind of stuff from people involved in Masonic lodges.
What is
that?
I don't know what that is either.
The Masons.
Oh,
People think they're like Quadas and Elks and stuff like that. Church has forbidden involvement with them. There's like 33 levels in Masonic lodges. After about the halfway mark, they start making serious pledges against Catholicism.
Oh,
really?
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's good we don't know that. I mean, it's...
I know, but you have people, men, whose grandfather was really involved in Masonic lodge, who promised his offspring to be faithful to the worship of some of the demons in Masonic lodges, so that when the 3rd generation, he doesn't renew his Masonic affiliation, there's a curse that falls on him that the grandfather placed, saying that if my descendants do not renew them, and because of this, I'm going to give you some benefits, power, authority, money, blah, blah. But that does happen. That does happen in families who have Masonic, not just on the father's line, but on the mother's line.
so there sounds like it's possibly easier to break than, say, like a possession or something that's latched on.
It is, because it was done by somebody else on you. It wasn't something you did to yourself. You initiated yourself. Okay. You've given more authority to that. They've also, shall we say, seminaries are paying more attention than they used to, that right around ordinations, diaconate and priesthood ordination. Evil likes to mess with young men who are dedicating their lives to God. There was a case in the Midwest somewhere where a guy committed like suicide like night or two before his ordination, where the devil really got into his head and really oppressed him really badly. And if I'm not mistaken, he like jumped off the seminary roof. Okay.
Jeez.
So seminaries have been taking more care of the fact that as people approach a significant spiritual milestone, the devil's going to want to mess with that.
Do you see similarities within the people that are possessed? Like, do they all exhibit, like, speak a different language, or they exhibit crazy strength, or is it?
Demons, angels are unique. They're a species unto themselves. So no two angels are the same. They're very, very different. So they react to different prayers, to different saints. I have found in the last year or two that, to my fascination, one of the hallmarks of a person in serious spiritual distress, possession, is the fear of the sacred, the fear of the holy. Well, in the last year, I've had a couple of people who've walked up to me and all of a sudden said, I feel really uncomfortable next to you. Something in me is really afraid of you. I go, but you came with another priest. He goes, yeah, he's not afraid of him. But you he's afraid of.
And that's the thing inside sensing what you do, who you are.
I think, shall we say, some people believe this and some people don't. Even nuns and priests. He knows who's a threat to him, and he knows who's not. I was on a pilgrimage in Europe. In this place, a lot of people go to pilgrimages, and I was in this English-speaking table because I only went with one other person, and I wasn't with a group, okay? And there comes in a group. I should have known they were Italians because they were loud, okay? And so I'm sitting there trying to have a very quiet little meal with English-speaking, a few from U.S., mainly, UK, and I think there was an Aussie in there just to make it. We wanted to be in a table where we were all speaking the same language. Yeah. And the hotel put us all together. So the lady got up from across the room, and I was sitting there wearing my habit, so I could have been a brother. She comes over to me and says, I need your help. I said, excuse me? You came with a priest. No. I need your help. And I go, why me? Goes, it doesn't like you.
Oh.
It knows when a person truly understands the authority, priest or layperson, in the name of Jesus, to command the demon to leave. So I'll give you a great example. So mom and dads go through terrible twos, terrible teenage years, right? And most of you will say, yeah, they're definitely possessed. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely possessed. And I would say to you, okay. So when they're asleep in their room, go sit next to them and pray over them and ask God to deliver from them anything not of God in them. As a parent, you have spiritual authority over them. The demons want to harass children, young people. Absolutely. That they are not spiritually aware as much as we would like them to be what's going on.
That's a fear.
Did you see that? What was it, the article? You were telling me about it. It was
the video?
The video,
there's like a nanny cam video. And you never know, especially because we work in post and like what things have been manipulated. But
have you
this little kid had a really gnarly scratch on its face. Mm-hmm. And the parents put a nanny cam in the crib. And then you see this thing materialize, move, cross. And it's like, kind of a shifting thing, and they interviewed him on the news, and I didn't know they went to that extreme. First I thought, it's just a video prank, and then they started getting into like interviewing the family in the news, and man, they seemed put together. It wasn't like
they seemed like concerned,
very concerned, scared, and that's always been a fear of mine, because when I think about this stuff, especially preparing for our interview and different things, I'm like, how would I feel if somebody started messing with them? If it's me.
But that's why you have your house blessed. That's why you don't let people come and stay in the house where are going to do not so good stuff in there. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you would say like, hang religious objects or blessings in the house, those type of things.
First of all, have your house blessed. You don't know who was there before you. You don't know what they did in that house. You're walking into an environment that spiritually, you don't know if it's been charged, should we say. in a negative, evil way or not. That was the ancient custom. If we didn't have quite the priest shortage, they'd go out almost yearly and bless everybody's house. You could take holy water from the church, go through each room, and bless the house, asking God's Holy Spirit to descend on the house. Bless the grounds around the house. Bless the garage. Holy water is powerful stuff. I have seen people scream like you hit them with acid. And I had a woman who was seriously possessed, and we had her go on retreat. And a nun right next to her was in the retreat room right next to her, and she went in there and blessed the whole retreat room. The next day, we found out she slept in the bathroom. Said, "Sister, did you bless the bathroom?" Yeah, I forgot. Yeah. Holy water is a very, very powerful thing that you have full access to use to bless your house. I travel with it when I stay in hotel rooms. I don't know what people have done in that room before I got there.
Do you find, because of what you do and who you are, any extra attention paid to you by him in terms of what you do and what you experience?
I think he tries to tempt me more. Most exorcists will say that after we started being involved in this, our, shall we say, the rate of temptation coming against us, it steps up the battle. And people who are warned as exorcists to pay attention to that because he wants to take people off the chessboard. So he'll tempt you in a way of public scandal. He wants to get competition out of the way. Okay, so he'll tempt you in all kinds of ways that make your ministry impossible, make it impossible to continue on. Every once in a while, there's an exorcist who is relieved. I think people in any kind of public office that in any way symbolize authority, symbolize goodness, are they at a higher standard, a higher likelihood of evil wanting to come against them? Absolutely. And I think people who are firemen, policemen, paramedics, and who want to live a good, holy life, they should know, yeah, I'm kind of entering the battle at a deeper level. And if I'm not careful, he'll want to take me out.
Does anything ever concern you? Like, do you ever encounter something where you're like, that's not scary? Like, most of us would be like,
no matter what it would be, we'd be scared. Yeah, we'd be like, I'm out of this room.
You know, it's interesting because there have been a few times where I've been concerned. I don't know if that's God's grace. I don't know if I'm just stupid. I don't know. I'm playing with the tiger by the tail and, realize, okay. I've rarely been in a place where I felt like uncomfortable with this. I've been in other exorcisms and it's just like, but other people were doing and I was there to help. And I was just like, not feeling really good about this.
Is it because of what you're seeing or what's being said by...
There was something, I want to say, deep in my soul that I just didn't feel comfortable with. And I was one of the few times nervous.
That's a good word. I was going to say like nervous, like this is
anxious.
Yeah.
I don't know about not working, but just anxious.
So it's not necessarily head spinning, levitating. I mean, does that exist or is that just a Hollywood
It's
thing?
very rare that for the devil to do that, basically game's up.
So that's like end game, final.
No, it's like, you know who I am for sure now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was going to say, wouldn't it be in its interest to hide it, be kind of like
absolutely
underneath the
there's
layers?
There's nothing for him to gain in doing all that other than trying to scare us. Okay.
Right.
The longer he can hide and make me think, well, maybe it is psychological. Mm-hmm. Okay. The longer he's kept from having to reveal that there's no way this is human. That, yeah, you're there. You're just really, really deep, but you're there. And usually demons travel in packs. They're not lone rangers. They're like wolves.
Have you seen somebody physically?
I have seen people twist and manipulate and have energy for hours that's, I think, humanly impossible.
Wow.
And like I said earlier, I usually work with 2 psychologists, and sometimes I meet with people. And after they leave, I say to them, okay, How much of this behavior can you explain psychologically? And how much of this behavior do you not have an explanation for? And sometimes I go, yeah, I think this person's got more psychological issues than spiritual issues. I go, okay. I'm looking for the truth. I'm not,
Right.
I'm not committed to it being one way or other. And people can have both, absolutely. And one of the questions when I have to finally approach the bishop and say, Bishop, there's a lot of prayers I could say short of the rite of exorcism. The rite of exorcism is like, okay, we're taking out the sledge. Okay?
Right.
And there's a lot of things up until that point. To go to the bishop and say, Bishop, I want to use the Catholic sledgehammer, he's going to say, where's your psych eval? Where's your physical eval? That says that this person has no medical condition that explains the situation and has no psychological condition that explains the situation and is psychologically put together in such a way that us praying over them is not going to cause any psychological harm to them. Okay, you have those two pieces.
Sounds pretty thorough.
Yeah.
Well, we're a very litigious society in the U.S., particularly California.
Right.
And the bishops don't want to be on the evening news
Yeah.
by a prayer session going bad.
Right.
So but at that point, it's for sure in that sense.
Right,
in terms
but
of,
there are guys in this country who are full-time exorcists, and they may see 100 cases in a year. And of 100 cases, they'll see 3 real possessions on a good year. Okay? So it's really very, very rare. It's very common, on TV.
Yeah, happens all the time.
But most priests may go their whole priesthood and not see a real case. Now they'll see a lot of oppression. They'll see a lot of other stuff, but full-blown possession, yeah, that's pretty rare. I get priests who call me and say, well, this and this and this is going on fine. Doing a good job. I would recommend you do this and then get back to me. And if that doesn't resolve it, then maybe I'm willing to see them. Because I'm full-time at a prison.
Yeah.
And this is my side thing. Besides being, in a religious community, doesn't leave a lot of time in my schedule. So there's a lot of stuff that the average priest can already do.
I don't know if we're going to wrap it up. Before we do, I had one, because we were talking about the jail, the prisons, and I worked there for a little bit, and I noticed there was a few weird things going on,
Probably more than a few.
Yeah. I was over the course of 6-7 years, but probably half of that place was full of people with mental health issues, on psychotic meds, on bipolar, schizophrenia. There was this one guy. He wasn't a big guy at all. He's probably half my size. He came in, and they were moving a lot of people away from the original housing unit, which was all people medicated, and they were sending them to us, which is just general population. So you had 100 people in this building, each side. He was carrying around a shoe, talking to it like it was a phone for half the time. He just got there, so it was going to cause problems because that's right. That's
people don't go for that too much. Okay.
So I'm like, okay, we got to just stick him in a room, lock him in. We'll just watch him, and then we'll figure out what to do from there. Because he was like talking to like no one.
Yeah.
And people were noticing that, and they're like, "You got to get him out of here because he's saying some really inappropriate stuff to us, and it's
making us really uncomfortable."
Right.
Yeah.
So I put him in this room.
Freaking out everybody else.
Yeah. Long story short, he ended up cutting himself with part of the glass. He broke the sink, jumped on top of the sink, and he was smearing in his blood satanic stuff all over the walls, screaming at us through the door. And by this point, I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I just related to whatever else. He's not taking his medicine, whatever. But when we opened the door is when we found the symbols. And I think he even said it too or something. And we ended up shipping him off somewhere else. But that was one of the times where I was like, I don't know. Is that something that's...
Why is that tied together? Seems like.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, obviously he probably has some sort of mental health issues going on somewhere in there. Because, right.
Blood is very sacred in satanic ritual.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
They use blood. They use human blood.
Yeah.
It's a mockery of a mass. Okay. We drink Jesus's blood. They drink human blood. But that's kind of off the thing. But yeah, that there's something there. Wouldn't be surprised.
It was like a circle and then some crosses through it. And
It's usually a pentagram. I'd want to bless that place after that.
yeah, I didn't go in the room. I was like,
I know.
Yeah.
You know, I'll finish this one story. Okay. So I was in a neighborhood where I grew up, and I went to see a person who was a high school teacher. And she'd been teaching for a few years, you know. She's like in her 40s. And I was sitting there talking to her. She'd known me for a long time. And so we're talking about her different kids and everything. And she just turns to me and says, you know, if I'm going to get killed by a kid, it's going to be the kid who sits right there. I said, really?
Oh.
He goes, yeah, he wears dark stuff all the time. He's really kind of on the dark side of stuff. There's something just not right there. I said, okay, when are you going to be in this room again when I can come and be here with you? So we figured out like 2 weeks later, and I came back and I blessed the room really well. Holy water, said a bunch of prayers there, bunch of blessed salt. So a few weeks later, we were talking. I said, so how's it going? He goes, you know that kid? You know, right after you blessed the room, he decided he didn't want to come to school anymore. He wants to be homeschooled now.
Wow.
I tell people often who have partners at work that they know they don't like them. Yeah, just go to work early when they're not there, stay late, and just sprinkle holy water, sprinkle blessed salt all around there, asking God to be very present here. So if there's any evil here, let it be sent from this room.
That's a good idea, actually.
You got nothing, you jump in cars all the time. Other people have been driving it, using it. That you have a bunch of little bottles, and don't even have to say holy water on it, so nobody else would know. Okay, just bottles of holy water that you use. I have guys that, some of the guys in the bunk next to me really, bring your little pill bottle. We'll fill it full of water. You bless your bed, and when he's gone, you bless his bed.
Leaving the back.
That'd be really creepy if the guy didn't want to go back to his bed. I'd be like, ooh.
In the back of our the patrol cars too. You know, you're throwing people in there. You know, throwing all the time.
I know all kinds of stuff. Why not? Why not? They do not like things that are blessed like that. It's very painful for them to be there. Okay, we underestimate the power of God. One of the main mistakes we make is somehow we put them like this. God created them. They are not his equal in any way. In any way. But TV always wants to do it like this. Okay. Part of the problem with TV, and honestly, I hate to say this, but I think TV is in service of the evil one. I really do. Because it never portrays God correctly, historically, anywhere accurately, as far as the Bible is, or the Christians have understood. And they're always trying to glorify evil like God is powerless. And yes, sometimes you're afraid, sometimes you're alone, but you're not without God.
Right.
You're not without your guardian angel. And sometimes when I just ask people directly, I ask guys who come in who have a lot of problems with, pornography on, the internet and promiscuous sex and the whole thing. I go, do you have a sexual demon attached to you? And they get really quiet and said, I've really wondered about that for a long, long time. And it's sad because why would that surprise us? You don't think guys have demons of greed?
Oh, yeah.
Demons of pride and ambition. That guys who have serious struggles in the whole sexual realm would have a demon in there, especially people who have had a sexual abuse issue in their life, that wound seriously affects them for many, many years. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when it's like a young child or something.
And that throws that whole sexual understanding and that whole sexual dynamism in them. It just gears it up ratchets it up, and young boys and all this stuff in society on the internet, way, way, way too hard for them to deal with.
Oh, I was reading some stuff on the Boy Scouts. That thing's going on now with all the
history of all that.
Oh my God, it's horrible.
Yeah,
It's awful.
Yeah, and for people who may be listening to this who aren't necessarily religious, or they fall in and out of being Catholic or whatever religion they are, and they do find themselves in something that's, supernatural, that's unwanted.
Mm-hmm.
Does that advice still kind of adhere to them in terms of seeking out help, or
God's going to send you somewhere amazing. He wants you to be saved and close to him so badly. You start asking him, you start praying, God, who? I think we underestimate a loving father who I can't imagine a child calling out to him and saying, I need help. I don't know where to go. Don't know where to start. And you don't think he's going to move doors and open avenues that they couldn't see? Certainly the God I believe in does. Ask the people that you know who are solidly spiritual people. So where would you go to talk to someone about spiritual help?
Right, because a lot of people probably don't talk at all.
No, probably keep it hidden. Probably
I know.
Or
They think it's them.
Or think they're crazy.
Right, and they don't think they're going to be believed. And that's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay, because that's a great shame thing, and it leaves people. Worst thing they do is they call their neighboring Catholic priest, their parish, and say, can I see someone?
So it's probably that they need to want help.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I got a call one time from a hospital emergency room, okay? It's a crazy call. It's 9 o'clock at night. I'm going to drive right down and see you. And I go, no, you're not. He goes, but my wife's in the emergency room. I go, Guy, I'm 3 hours from you. I'm not meeting with you at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, you need to go back to church. He goes, but I'm not Catholic. And I said, did I say that? You need to return to your house of worship. You need to return to your spiritual base. If this is truly spiritual, this will help you. I didn't tell him if this is truly spiritual, it won't like it, and you'll know for certain it reacts in a house of worship in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's part of this discernment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I cannot be your exorcist, your pastor, and everything else. When people come to me, I'm just the person that deals with the supernatural things. You still need to be going to church. You still need to be good in your prayer life. You still need to be attentive to your pastor. After we're done with the thing, they're still supposed to be in that community and worshiping. But if they become overly attached to me, they've forgotten their shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
That's not right.
Mm-hmm.
That's not right. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm only going to be part of their life for a little while. And it doesn't help them to bond to me. You need to be bonded to your community. You need to have people praying for you there. You need to make sure that your spiritual life is staying really strong. I have to put really good boundaries on them that way because they want to make me like their full-time EMT.
Yeah. Their life coach, spiritual life coach forever.
Yeah.
Their lifeguard.
Yeah.
Forever. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
And I usually tell them I take one call in between their sessions.
Uh-huh.
Sessions are about a month apart. I take one call from you. So be careful about the call you make because I'm got 40 hours a week in the prison and I got other stuff. And I can't be holding your hand every week. That's why you need your pastor, a community to part with, other people in your family who pray with you, who assist you. I'm not your everything.
And just be strong in your faith yourself.
Well, you have to grow.
Yeah.
You have to grow. And if you're leaning on me, then you're not doing the work to grow the faith you need to grow. And he'd love to keep the person immature faith-wise in the battle so that they don't understand their right relationship to God as a child of God and the authority that a child of God has.
I have one quick last question, then we'll let you go. Is the truth about knowing the demon's name to finally finish that process off? Is that just kind of a Hollywood thing that's been kind of built up because it's flamboyant, or is that something? And why is that so?
When people yell your name in a large group, can you stop from turning?
No.
Okay.
I'll do it right now.
Demons' names are not given them by other demons. They're a perversion of the name given them by God. It has authority. It's like when your girl gets old enough and dad calls her name,
right?
Every muscle in her bone is going to react to dad's voice. That name has great power over them. In the end of time, the New Testament tells us that God is going to hand you a stone. On the stone is your name, written by God, that explains the truest truth about who you are. That's God's name for you. Not the name your mom and dad gave you, but God's name. The demons have a name. With that name comes great authority to call them. They will do everything to hide that name. That's the last thing they give up. So they throw out the lesser one, and the highest ranking one sacrifices all the other ones. Okay, so when you finally get to one of the main guys, when you hear the name, you go, oh, so this is who you are. Because he's been around a while. And if you've been doing this for a little while, names sound familiar, and you email other exorcists and said, they say they're so-and-so. And goes, oh, yeah. Yeah, so there is truth to that. It's really spiritual warfare, and it's the only time in the Catholic Church that you are allowed to beat something to a pulp. You're going to tell me your name, whether it's today, tomorrow, 3 weeks from now. You will tell me your name.
Yeah.
And they have to answer to that name, because in the rite, in the ceremony, the priest says, basically, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to reveal who you are. So it's not I, but I, as a servant of Him Most High, command you, because you're still an angel, a fallen angel nonetheless. And you have to answer your Creator. And they will squirm, they will scream, they will try and give you all kinds of false names. They're just like peeling an onion. And a lot of prayers, sometimes weeks, months, years go by.
Jeez.
To the truth. And then when he finally says it, you can almost just like hear the room, like the air part, just like, so that's the final net. And you start saying the prayer. And you could just see it. It's just like game, set, and match. And it knows it and it hates it. In the end, it reveals who it is, how, by what way it entered that person. And they'll say, this at this date, by that.
Wow.
It's very specific.
That's pretty chilling.
Well, the chilling part, when you said wolves and traveling in packs, I was like, wait, what? And how it's just like a group attacking someone.
They don't, lone demons in a person is rare. They tend to be groups. They tend to, like colonies, travel in groups, in packs.
Wow.
Oh,
not that that's how I wanted to end it.
no. Well, I guess to end it you've covered so much and so much depth.
Yeah.
I mean,
really
I think
good.
we've touched upon a lot of things, but is there any last words to anyone listening?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. God has been in this battle before humankind was created. Okay? We got in the middle of this battle because evil hates God. And we're God's children. And they're taking out their anger and their wrath on us. Trust God. Ask Him to guide